this, drop it. Power panel, Cenk, Uygur, John Idarola, and Rayyvana with you guys. You guys are checking out Rayyvana on Rebel Headquarters. Everybody knows that. You're also checking her out on Twitch. Everybody also knows that. Twitch.tv/TYT. And John is Dragon Daddy. He's a Damage Report. Everybody's also checking that out. And I have evidence of all of that. Okay, so lots of fun stories for you guys. We have to do the times being what they are, we do a news show. What that means is we are required to spend a certain portion of each show just telling you what the other news stations are lying about. Okay, I mean, we have a crazy job because we got to tell you the truth and then say, oh, by the way, if you heard this, it's totally not true. That's like what lunatics believe. So there's a lot of that in the second hour. Obviously, Halloween is looking to suck the souls out of your children. That's obvious. And if fentanyl is being distributed to all your kids, you're gonna be shocked to find out that the only solution to all of these nightmares is to elect Republicans. I mean, just a wild coincidence. Anyway, a lot of that later in the program, but we start with very serious things.
We do. And we will get to more disinformation in this hour as well when it comes to climate change. We'll be talking about Hurricane Ian. But first, we start off with lighter news. Joe Biden announced yesterday that we're closer than we've been in decades to nuclear annihilation. He said this at a Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee fundraiser, the sort of thing that you do. He said it was the first time since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis that there has been a, quote, direct threat of nuclear weapons being used, quote, if in fact things continue down the path they are going. I assume there that he's referencing Kanye West's recent comments, or maybe something about Ukraine and Russia, I'm not sure. Anyway, Putin during his big speech recently did talk about the possibility of using nuclear weapons, referencing the fact that the United States has done it in the past and implying that that sets a precedent despite the fact that it was the better part of a century ago. Anyway, he said, if the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, we will certainly use all the means at our disposal to protect Russia and our people. I'm not bluffing. Now, apparently, Joe Biden does not believe that Putin is bluffing either. He says, we've got a guy I know fairly well. He's not joking when he talks about potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming. I don't think there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. And so he sort of concludes that train of thought saying, we're trying to figure out what is Putin's off-ramp. Where does he find a way out? Where does he find himself when where he does not only lose face, but significant power? And look, Biden is hardly the first person in recent weeks or even months to talk about the possibility of nuclear weapons being used. But of course, when the president does it, it becomes a significantly more significant thing. And although almost immediately after these comments, press secretary says that we're not changing our readiness or anything, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Joe Biden did say it wasn't a hot mic, it was part of his prepared remarks, so what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a story that's not getting enough attention. So a lot of people in the establishment believe certain things, even though they have no evidence for them. So for example, there's no way Donald Trump can win, except he did. He won in 2016 and they were dumbfounded. They shouldn't have been dumbfounded. The polls showed a close race. A race that he was an underdog in, but winnable. In the Republican primaries, he was the favorite from day one to the end. And the entire time they're like, no, I do like Marco Rubio. Everybody knows that, Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush, right? So people like to deny reality because it makes them uncomfortable. And so everybody thinks, oh yeah, Putin keeps saying that he's gonna use nukes, but of course he's not going to. No, you're projecting your rationality onto him. He just invaded Ukraine with the most half-assed plan you've ever seen. Does the guy look overly rational to you? So sometimes Putin seems to consolidate power in a way that shows intelligence, right? And other times he does really dumb things, sometimes emotional things, because a lot of the right wing, remember, are based on emotions. So they're fearful, they want to show strength, they want to look like alphas. They do ridiculous things to do those emotional, to satiate their emotions, let's put it that way, right? So Putin is a guy who just did something terrible and has poisoned tons of people in his own country, done fake elections, you go on and on, right? So the idea that there's no chance he would use nukes when he says he would use nukes is not correct. There is a certain percentage chance that he will use them. Now, if the number is 28%, holy cow, oh no, that's about the percentage chance that Trump had of winning in 2016, right? So we're all whistling past the graveyard if that's the case. If it's 4%, it's a disaster. We're taking a 4% chance that the entire planet is wiped out, right? So this is a massive story. Honestly, we haven't covered it enough. And so what I don't know is how much the news coverage will affect whether he does it or not. But still, it's our job at news to talk about what the big important stories are. And this is a giant important story. So one of the reasons that most of the media didn't talk about it is because our side hasn't been talking about it. Like our reporters just wait for permission from people in power. They're like, maybe we talk about it? No, not yet. Okay. Now that Biden has said it to, of course, the most important people in the country, donors, now it's real because he tells them things that are way more real than he says in public, right? Like nothing will fundamentally change. By the way, he was giving this event at Murdoch's house. Not Rupert Murdoch, James Murdoch, but yes, Rupert Murdoch's son. Okay, he's supposed to be the more liberal son, right? So he's going to tell the Murdochs and everyone else, oh, by the way, we might all die. And he thinks that Putin is serious about the nukes, but we're not going to share that with the public, and we're going to poo-poo it, etc. And then people will not write much about it. Well, the reality is, it is a certain percentage chance, and that is very, very frightening. Rayyvana.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's deeply concerning to hear the President Joe Biden say that we are closer to Armageddon than we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. But also last week, Joe Biden said that he was raised by the Puerto Rican community. So I'm hoping that this statement is a little bit closer to that type of, exaggerating, a little bit fabricated statement, a corn pop statement, if you will, of Joe Biden's than one that's an imminent threat to everyone in the world. But like you were noting, the media downplayed the chance that Trump had to become president. They also massively downplayed, the chance that Putin was going to invade Ukraine in the first place. And now we have, these national security experts, these foreign policy experts saying that, it's not. It seems more that Putin's been backed into a corner, and the chances of him using nuclear weapons hasn't necessarily increased from yesterday to today. But his position has worsened, so this is more of a threat, an empty threat than anything. But I mean, those same experts were saying he was never going to invade Ukraine because he didn't stand to necessarily gain anything geopolitically in that moment, and he still did it. So how much can we trust these experts? I don't know, but it's definitely a concerning time, and especially to hear these words from the president of the United States, it definitely puts them, in a different level of importance than otherwise.
Yeah, I just want to pick up real quick on two things that Rayyvana said. One is, and we talked about this on a previous show, but like the Cuban Missile Crisis just stopped the world. Everybody was like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Are we all gonna die? This is arguably a more direct threat than the Cuban Missile Crisis because one of the people involved, one of the sides involved is saying, no, I'm definitely gonna do it if you guys cross our new so-called border. And the Ukrainians are crossing it every day. I mean, they're regaining territory in the 4 areas that Russia had the fake elections in. And he's like, I'm gonna do it. And everybody's like, no big deal, yeah. No, big deal, giant deal, right? I don't know what the right reaction to that is, and that is the most important question. But at least we should be cognizant of the actual threat, right? And to be fair, guys, like I thought that Putin was bluffing about going into Ukraine. I was wrong about that. So now, unlike the mainstream media, I don't then go, oh, I'm wrong, I should be promoted. Like they never get anything wrong, and they constantly get promoted, right? They never get anything right. I mean, so but I was wrong because I thought Putin is relatively intelligent, and that's a deeply irrational move. Well, if I was wrong about that and he's willing to do deeply irrational moves, are we positive he's not going to use the nukes?
Yeah, well, and let's be clear. You can be wrong about whether a thing will happen or not and still be kind of proven right in why you were wrong. It was irrational. It was a very bad call. It was actually way worse of a call than we thought it would be because we were giving his military, as most seem to be, way too much credit. I agree that the line is being crossed, as you say. They're crossing that line that he referenced, and it's weird that people aren't taking it more seriously. I mean, these Ukrainian troops are now attempting to invade these regions that just voted to join Russia in totally fair elections. They wanted it. I mean, I'm not gonna say that it's fair, but I can't say that it's not. Nobody can say, who's to say if it's democracy or not? I mean, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I think Putin's got some good points. Anyway.
That's our correspondent from Gray Zone, of course.
Jeez, don't pull me in your stuff. Anyway, yeah, no, I am worried too. We'll see, but we have referenced the status on the ground. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. This week, troops that had been stationed in the capital in Kyiv were pushing forward in the country's east and south, threatening a major new breakthrough and forcing Putin soldiers to retreat from territory that was literally just annexed. I mean, these regions, so turbulent in these regions. And bear in mind, by the way, in all these updates that we can trust to some extent what is being said here, but it is still being filtered through propaganda. We might feel more favorably towards this particular state and their propaganda apparatus, but still grains of salt. In any event, because the Russians have done their tactical retreat in the form of turning around and running literally as fast as they can, they've left behind a lot of equipment. And in fact, Ukraine, which had been facing shortfalls, especially certain types of artillery ammunition, they're saying now they've recovered more than enough. They put out this really mocking tweet saying Russia is trying to maintain its status as the largest supplier of military equipment for the Ukrainian army, and even to improve its status, knowing that Lend-Lease will soon come into effect. Hugh Army loves its trophy ammo. So anyway, they say that they've gotten artillery and tanks and ammunition, and they immediately turned that stuff around and began using it on the retreating Russian troops. My advice, by the way, and again, I'm not an expert. I didn't think that they would invade, so what the hell do I know? But I'm reminded of, I'm gonna make a very recent pop culture reference. And it's in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And at one point, there's this vicious rabbit. And so they retreat and they're looking for a plan. What do we do? And one of them says, perhaps it would confuse it if we were to retreat again. So my advice to the Russian troops would be, just keep retreating. Honestly, just keep retreating over the border. And I know what you're thinking. No, but Putin can't go back, tail between his legs. Do you know how good he is at propaganda inside of Russia? Just say, what I have done is I have challenged this international alliance of these a-holes, including the US. And there's so many of them that I was not going to send more of our people to needlessly die. What we're gonna do is we're gonna rebuild our strength here inside of the motherland, and then someday we will challenge, or whatever, I don't know, Putin, come up with your own thing. But I think that that is obviously the best call. They are going to lose tens of thousands of additional troops, and what possible benefit could it bring to any regular person in Russia? Maybe some ephemeral sense of glory for Putin. It has not been going that way. So just get the hell out of there, honestly, and we can move on with all of our lives.
Yeah, no, I'm just worried to death that they're gonna actually use the nukes. And then, of course, then the next question is, do we retaliate? So these are dark times, and I hate to depress you, and usually I'm the guy with all the hope, but we should do a little bit of buckling up just in case, because Putin is not a stable person, and he just proved it in Ukraine. So when you've got a guy who's a little bit unhinged, to say the least, threatening to use nuclear weapons, we should brace for impact a little bit.
Yeah, literally. Why don't we do this next story? I think we've probably got time. Whenever you're ready, we can launch right into this video. What you're seeing, that footage is hundreds of mourners mourning the death of a 7-year-old Palestinian boy, Ryan Suleiman. And what you saw in that footage happened more than a few days ago. The update that you need to know about is that the Israeli military has looked into the death of Ryan, and they have cleared themselves of any responsibility.
Really?
They say that despite the fact that he ran away from them, was chased by them, and then collapsed, had cardiac arrest, and died as a result, it wasn't their fault. They didn't do anything wrong, and we're gonna give you the details. First of all, the boy's parents allege he was chased by Israeli soldiers on his way home from school, and then he collapsed when troops appeared at his home. They say he fell unconscious after troops interrogated his father and threatened him and his brothers with arrest, clearly terrifying him. Doctors who treated the boy said a preliminary examination showed he experienced cardiac arrest induced by what could be described as a severe panic attack. There apparently was an autopsy done by the Palestinian hospital that has not yet been released, but as of yesterday, Israel's investigation has now been closed. They denied any violence in the encounter between the soldiers and the boy's family, saying that the soldiers acted as expected of them while adhering to the army's values. They mean one thing when they say that, I agree, but probably meaning something quite different. What do you all think about this?
Yeah, so first of all, in terms of the Israeli military clearing itself, it's a joke, let's move on, right? Only credulous, ridiculous reporters in DC would take that seriously. And it doesn't apply just to Israel, it applies to any country. The US military has cleared itself of bombing a wedding. That has actually literally happened before. The Russian military has cleared itself of needlessly invading Ukraine and killing thousands of civilians. Really, oh wow, let's report that as if it's true. Okay, so of course that's nonsense, that's the easy part. Look guys, I called Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip a lot of things, but I have not often referred to it as an apartheid state. That was a mistake. It's definitely an apartheid state, and if you don't think it is, you're kidding yourself. They completely control those folks' lives, and so if there's a 7-year-old kid that does something that they don't like, their military hunts that kid down, and the Palestinians do not control their own lives. They do not control their own government. The Israeli military does. So why are they not able to control themselves? Because it's an apartheid state. There's a different rules and laws, very literally, for Israelis and for Palestinians in the occupied territories. So they'll say, oh, well, there's a couple of Palestinians that live in Israel, it's whatever percentage. Really, are they in charge? Are they making the rules? No, they're not making any rules. They're not remotely anywhere near power. No, but even so, right? You say, okay, whoever the Israeli citizens are, do they live under different laws than the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip? Of course they do. I mean, it's not even close. And what are those laws? It's a brutal military occupation. There's no question about that. In fact, the Israelis have killed 100 Palestinians recently. Why? They said, oh, because the Palestinians have done some violence in Israel. Okay, right? So then what do the Israelis do? Violence back. Actually, a lot more violence back. But what does Western media tell you all the time? No, the state violence doesn't count. When America invades Iraq, that's not terrorism. But wait a minute, we killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. No, not terrorism. The state is allowed to do any violence it likes, right? So when Israel does violence in the occupation, they say, no, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. No, it does count. It does count. In fact, it's worse, because it is the state saying, we are going to methodically oppress and imprison these people, and we're going to do it based on the fact that we think they can't govern themselves. A deeply racist ideology. So let's just call it what it is. So in this case, they literally scared a Palestinian kid to death. So has Israel's military killed children before? Yes. Have they killed them more directly? Yes, right? But it is symbolic. Like the Palestinians are being oppressed and like, again, literally scared to death of the brutal military occupation of Israel. If that fact makes you uncomfortable, you should try to change it. But you can't pretend that it's not a fact, because it's definitely a fact. Rayyvana.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, right? Anytime Israel attacks Palestine, it's always framed in the media as self-defense. You know, a Palestinian child throws a rock at a fence and the IDF bombs a building. And that's self-defense somehow in the eyes of the media. It's ridiculous. But am I surprised to hear that the IDF has cleared itself from wrongdoing in the death of the 7-year-old? No, not at all. I think that there is no act of atrocity that they could commit that they wouldn't somehow find a way to justify. They have killed upwards of 200 people in a single weekend by relentlessly bombing Gaza. They bombed and targeted and bombed the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, an organization which provides direct services to children who desperately need those services. They've targeted hospitals. They murdered a journalist, Shireen, probably more than one journalist, but recently Shireen, and then they attacked the grieving people at her funeral. It's horrifying, and simultaneously there is this coordinated PR campaign going on to smear anyone who criticizes the IDF, the Israeli government, as anti-Semitic. It's happening not just in right-wing media in the United States, it's happening on CNN, it's happening on MSNBC. For the love of God, it's happening within the Democratic Party. We see it happen to Rashida Tlaib, to Ilhan Omar. They tried to frame Bernie Sanders as anti-Semitic for criticizing Israel. He's Jewish, and most of his family died in the Holocaust. I mean, there's just no ends to which it seems they won't go to justify this. And you're right to say it, Cenk, apartheid. And when the Amnesty International came out with their really damning report about the apartheid in Israel, of course, they were attacked as anti-Semitic. It's twofold. It's the violence there, and then this PR campaign to make sure that the voices criticizing Israel and standing up for Palestine are silenced or, slandered.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on that. So first of all, is there real anti-Semitism? Absolutely. In fact, it's raging in America right now. So when you ask the right-wingers who's ultimately responsible for all of these things, including drinking the blood of children, a lot of them say the Jews. So anti-Semitism is on the rise, and it is something that is really scary here and abroad, right? But is this anti-Semitism? No. In fact, what it is it's Israel's right wing saying, hey, even though we're obviously being racist towards the Palestinians, we're saying they're incapable as human beings of peacefully governing themselves. They're animals. They're animals who can't control themselves, and we have to shove violence down their throat and imprison them for 56 more years. We're obviously the racist ones. But what we'll do is, in the middle of rising anti-Semitism, we'll use fake anti-Semitism charges to try to protect our racist policies. It is the most disgusting and counterproductive thing they could possibly do. And if they want to come at me with like, oh, you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say things that are true. We're allowed to smear people, and we're allowed to imprison people for 56 years based on a deeply racist ideology, but you're not allowed to counter us. Well, sad day for you, I am, and I just did. So kiss my ass. And by the way, free the Palestinians, free them. It is deeply, deeply immoral to keep to keep them in prison, and the idea they say, oh, well, the Palestinians, some of them potentially say that we shouldn't have a state. No, you're saying they shouldn't have a state because of your racist ideology. So go ahead, call anyone any names you like, but the reality is you're 1,000 times worse if you're a right-wing Israeli who says that we should imprison those poor people based on their race and their religion. Own it, understand it, and be honest about it. And stop brutalizing the kids of Palestinians. It's disgusting.
Agreed. And on that note, we're gonna take a break, but we've got a lot more coming, so don't go anywhere.
All right, back on TYT Power Panel. I was about to say JR. John and Rayyvana with you guys.
JR Idarola reporting for duty.
Well, JR is on in the next hour. So, but right now, by the way, also Natasha Sandley and Carmen P, who just became members by hitting what? You know it, the join button below the video on YouTube. We appreciate everybody else, tyt.com/join. All right.
My guess was gonna be by hitting a Nazi, but technically you're not supposed to do that. Sorry. Yes, hit the join button. Anyway, we've entered into the crazy part of the first hour. Prepare yourself for this.
I am your true Nikola Tesla. And I'm not even a scientist.
Well, hold on just a second, sir, because you're giving off minimum 1 to 2 doctorate vibes right there. Come on, you're telling me you're not a scientist? No, that's Kanye West, and of course, he went on Tucker Carlson to deliver insane nuggets like that. But what he was brought on was to talk about the White Lives Matter thing. That's why Tucker wanted him there to just deliver for his white supremacist audience the talking points they want. Here you go.
You made reference to the White Lives Matter t-shirt you brought out at Paris Fashion Week.
Yeah.
Why did you do that, and what did it mean?
You know, I do certain things from a feeling. I just channel the energy. It just feels right. It's using a gut instinct, a connection with God, and just brilliance. You know, like as if you asked like Tanya Harding how she did the triple flip or the triple spin.
Yeah.
Nailed it. The triple axel. Anyway, okay, so I can't get into Kanye West's mind, and if I could, I would not. But so I don't know exactly why he chose to wear it or whatever. Maybe so that he could go on to Tucker Carlson's show. Maybe to get attention. I don't know. The choice to have Candace Owens there with him doing it, I know why she did it. That one's a little bit easier to read. And I know why Tucker Carlson is excited about that. I know why he put on his faux gravitas quasi-journalist voice. Now, why did you do that? What was that about? As if they haven't already talked about this. Everything, it's so artificial, it's so fake. But anyway, we've got other, perhaps even crazier stuff to get to. But on the matter of the shirt, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm gonna be perhaps even a little bit more insulting to Kanye than I normally am. So buckle up, brace for impact. So normally I call him crazy, he's got mental health issues, he should get therapy, etc. But having watched all the clips they released of that interview, I actually think like he partially sounded crazy, but less so that, more just deeply unintelligent. So, and that's a tough thing to say about a person, but we have to be honest because he's influencing people. So if he was in his cave and he was deeply unintelligent, okay, no problem, have at it, Hoss, right? But he's out in the public sphere trying to influence people in a certain direction. So for example, like, does he understand the context of White Lives Matter? Later in that clip, he talked to Tucker Carlson about how his dad laughed that he wore the White Lives Matter t-shirt. I don't know his relationship with his dad, I don't care. But when asked why were they laughing, he's like, well, it was funny because it's so obvious that White Lives Matter. Kanye, that's not the issue. Everybody thinks that every life matters, including white people's lives. Of course. No, the issue is it's a juxtaposition to Black Lives Matter, and it's phrased that people who don't think that police are actually abusing black people and that the authorities shouldn't care about black lives, and that that's not an actual phenomenon, police abuse of black Americans, wear shirts and say things like White Lives Matter as a way to insult Black Lives Matter. But you see, that takes like a tiny bit of nuance to understand. I mean, a tiny fraction of intelligence and nuance and context, the ability to understand context. I don't think Kanye has it. I just think he's just not bright. And so, when he says like, oh, I did it because I had a feeling. Well, I believe that. The feeling was, I need attention. I need attention. The only thing he understands is if he wears that shirt, he's gonna get a ton of attention, right? But then he has the extra arrogance, aided and abetted by everyone around him, and apparently a lot of media. Genius. I mean, I hear this about Kanye all the time. And there's no question he's bought into it. He's drank his own Kool-Aid. Why did I wear a shirt that's deeply offensive to other black Americans? Brilliance. No, he's just a dumbass, and that's the harshest truth of all. But it's indisputable.
Yeah, I will say Kanye's dad was a Black Panther, so I think the chances that he was laughing at Kanye as opposed to like along with him are pretty high. But I will also just say, Kanye has bipolar disorder and he doesn't take his medication because he says that it zaps his creativity. And that's something I've been extraordinarily sympathetic to. My dad is a musician. My dad has bipolar disorder, and he always talks about how since he's been medicated, he's not able to write music anymore. And that's been really, really hard for him. So I've been sympathetic to that in the past. But when it comes to things like this, blaming it on, his mental illness is it's absurd. I mean, Kanye has done and said heinous, horrific things in the pursuit of, his fame, continued attention by the media. And of course, some of it is just bigotry. Not this instance, we'll get into some other stuff, but like it's not, you can't always just put it off to his mental illness. Like it's just absurd. And the White Lives Matter shirt, of course, is just, he was not in the media cycle enough recently. So let's do something to get on the news, to get people talking, to maybe to get Kim's attention,
Oh, geez. Yeah, and look, I'll say what I largely said when he first wore the shirt. Like I said, I know that we're supposed to be offended by this, and if you are offended by it, that's perfectly fine. That's your right. But I wasn't offended by it. I was just like embarrassed for him, and not because like the issue is, if there's anything that I hate, it's people who are way too full of themselves. It's why I despise people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk and stuff like that. And apparently Kanye West deserves to be in that category. To call wearing the shirt brilliance. No, the issue is what you did. There was a stroke of genius to you, was to put a slogan on a shirt that white supremacists were wearing 3 years ago. It's so behind the times. It's so like, was it genius if Candace Owens was a part of it, honestly? Like, no, that's a serious question to Kanye West, because Kanye West probably likes Candace Owens or whatever. Does he think that she's a genius like he is? And yet he has been brought down to her level. And so just this mediocrity, this mediocre performance art for 80-year-old white racists, it's not genius, it's not brilliance, it's not anything that anyone else couldn't do. It's just things that most people wouldn't want to do because it's so pathetic. And so I wasn't offended, I was embarrassed for him. And he really needs to spend a lot more time not seeking the camera, because he doesn't do well for himself when he's on it. Anyway, you wanna talk about some other topics? We've got some crazy stuff. Kanye West is a big fan of Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean that he can't have the occasional critical word for someone in the Trump orbit, including Jared Kushner.
Sitting with Jared and sitting with Josh and finding out other pieces of information, I was like, wow, these guys might have really been holding Trump back. What is it? His work in Israel or his work in Palestine? What is this? You know where he made these peace treaties? Where was that? Do you know the facts on this right here? So I'm like,
well, I think that was between Israel and some of the Arab nations.
I just think it was to make money. I just think that that's what they're about, is making money. I don't think that they have the ability to make anything on their own. I think they were born into money.
It's my favorite thing that he's ever said, because he's totally right. He's totally 100% right. He's just not only right about the people he's talking about. Like, he's saying they're holding Trump back. Those people who were born into money and only care about money and can't really produce anything, they just take people's money. Yes, that is 100% true of Jared Kushner. It's just that Jared Kushner can't hold a candle to Trump in those exact categories.
Yeah, no, Kanye's never been more right. And so, look, fairest show in America. I loathe Kanye West. Anybody who watches the show knows how much I can't stand him. I think he's one of the dumbest people in America. I've said it today already several times, and I'll say it again the next time we talk about him. Because I don't like, nothing is more nails on a chalkboard than people calling that dumbass a genius. Okay, so now, but nonetheless, I'm gonna tell you that the two things he said are both totally right, okay? So he talked about how he went to dinner with Jared and his brother Josh Kushner, and that they were handling him and they were handling Trump. and that they thought that Trump and him were the crazy ones, and that they were the smart businessmen who would handle them. Do the Kushners actually think that? Definitely. Yeah. By the way, are they right about half of that? Yes, Trump and Kanye are crazy. And so if you're a rational person, you don't have to be smart, just a rational, non-insane person, you would think, how do I handle these lunatics? I mean, one of them was wearing a White Lives Matter shirt, even though he's black, like what white supremacists wear. The other one, says that maybe we should nuke a hurricane, and that the stealth fighter is actually invisible to the naked eye. And I can go on and inject bleach into your lungs. I mean, we can go on and on and on. These are two verifiable lunatics. So if you were the Kushners, you would definitely figure out, how do I handle them? Okay, now, but there's the second component is even more true. Were the Kushners looking, and Ivanka and all, et cetera, were they looking to capitalize on their time in the Trump administration to make money? Of course. Did they think these rubes, Trump and Kanye, let's take advantage of them to make money? Of course they did. And did they actually do that? Yes, right after he got out of office. And by the way, both Tucker and Kanye didn't know, but one of the countries that they made the peace treaty with was Saudi Arabia. And lo and behold, right after he got out of office, Jared Kushner started a private equity company, and he got a tiny little investment from a country called Saudi Arabia. But do you know how much it was? Maybe it was de minimis, maybe it's not important. I mean, like $200,000, no big deal. $2 billion. He got $2 billion to invest for Saudi Arabia. He takes a giant chunk of that every year, right? It's gonna make him fabulously rich. And was he planning that while doing foreign policy for the United States of America, that he didn't actually care about our interests but his own? Of course that's true. And but look, the thing is, the funny thing about Kanye is he's so unintelligent, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. So everyone else in the Trump administration already knew that. And they're all trying to do that. And so they thought, well, we don't talk about that publicly. Of course, we're just trying to rob the American people for our own benefit. But to Kanye's credit, he doesn't even realize that. He's like he's not part of the robbery is my point. Look, I'm being fair to him, right? So when he realizes it's a robbery, and it dawns on him super late. I mean, they had the dinner in February. Like Trump's been out of office this whole time. That entire time he supports Trump, all the way to now 6-7 years later. And he's been friends with Jared Kushner, and he's finally like, oh, Jared just wants to rip people off. Really, Sherlock, you just figured that out. But yes, thank you for being accidentally honest.
Yeah, I agree with you both. He's completely right for the wrong or unknowingly wrong reasons. I will say though, Jared Kushner is a Jewish person. His family is Jewish, Holocaust survivors. And Kanye West has, saying that Jewish people are out just to make money could be interpreted as anti-Semitism, not on its own. Jared Kushner is definitely a scam artist, but given Kanye's history of anti-Semitism, I mean, for the love of God, today on his own Instagram, he posted a screenshot of a conversation he was having with P. Diddy, who was concerned with Kanye's erratic behavior, was like, hey, give me your address. Let me meet up with you. I promise it's not a threat. I just want to make sure you're good as all love. Kanye responded and said, I'm gonna use you as an example to show the Jewish people that told you to call me that no one can threaten or influence me. So I'm just saying, maybe behind the statement, there was a little more malice and a little more bigotry than it initially gave off, just given his other statements about Jewish people.
Yeah. Well, then he's screwed, because if there's one thing Tucker Carlson hates, it's anti-Semitism. And I know that Kanye's gonna be back on his show tonight. So there's gonna be some hard questions that will materialize. Anyway, we have one more clip, and for the life of me, I have no idea how I'm supposed to set this up. So let's just jump right into it.
Lizzo loses 10 pounds and announces it. The bots, that's a term for people it's like telemarketer callers, like on Instagram, they attack her for losing weight because the media wants to put out a perception that being overweight is the new goal when it's actually unhealthy for people to promote that. It's demonic.
What, can I ask? Yeah. I've noticed this also.
Yeah.
Why do you think they would want to promote unhealthiness among the population?
It's a genocide of the black race. They want to kill us in any way they can. Planned Parenthood was made by Margaret Sanger, a known eugenics with the KKK.
Oh, God. What are bots again? I need it explained. Look, that's a maddening clip. And not only because Tucker Carlson, who has made a career out of condescending to his audience, spoke to Kanye West in literally the most condescending tone I've ever heard in my life. But anyway, look, he's got this concern about Lizzo or whatever. He's allowed to have that concern. But for Tucker Carlson to treat what he's saying as if it's like the received wisdom of a divine being, all Kanye was doing there is if you asked a guy who just pounded a bottle of whiskey to recount an episode of Joe Rogan, that's what you got out of Kanye West. And Tucker Carlson is treating it like it's the most fabulous, fascinating thing that he's ever heard in his life.
Yeah. I'm gonna break this down as usual. Okay, so Kanye says that they are doing this. See, he never clarifies ever who they are, right? Sometimes he'll say the media, right? So, but he just explained it was bots. So wait, is it bots or is it the mainstream media? Because bots and mainstream media are completely different things. So are the bots trying to do a genocide of black folks, or is the media trying to do a genocide of black folks? And do you think that the media got together and was like, how do we genocide? How do we? Oh, I got an idea. Why don't we praise Lizzo for her weight or discourage her from losing weight, and that'll be an efficient way to commit genocide against black people? No, you have to break down their lack of logic just so you understand how absurd it is. Because if you don't break it down, right-wingers will believe anything. Oh yeah, obviously you try to genocide the black people. They are doing it, we're not doing it, right? They're doing it because Lizzo and
the flu
and bots, right? Like it doesn't have to make sense. It's maniacal. And then of course, look, he just doesn't understand facts and ideas and logic. He doesn't understand anything. Just like verbal diarrhea that some people still call genius. It's nails on a chalkboard. Okay, anyway, but the bottom line is, if you want to make a point about, hey, listen, let's not glorify being overweight. Now that's a tough point to make. You have to be really sensitive about that. And I don't think that's what people are doing with Lizzo at all, right? But I understand that some people say, hey, you should be proud of how you look no matter what. And you could have an interesting discussion or even debate about that. But saying that it's demonic and an attempt at genocide is, as usual, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah.
So if everybody says, hey, Cenk, you're right, Kanye's obviously mentally disturbed / deeply unintelligent, then I'm okay with it. Hey, it's a free country. He's allowed to say whatever he wants, right? But if you actually believe him, you're also cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
I have been really frustrated with these like recent upsurge of attacks on Lizzo because it's so clearly grounded in, for a lot of the critics, racism, misogyny, and fat phobia, a fear of like this idea of body positivity that she's spreading, and like, she's celebrating losing weight. Like Lizzo is someone who's about accepting your body, and if your goal is to lose weight, you should be accepting of that. And of course, there's haters who are gonna, just be frustrated and jealous or whatever and mad about that. So they're gonna rush to her post to attack her for that. But Lizzo is so squeaky clean. This is just a fun-loving, like, woman with no controversies, exceptionally talented, self-made musician, an amazing flautist. Has played with the New York Philharmonic. She studied music performance in college. She's just a really fun-loving, awesome person. So you just know that these attacks have to be rooted in that bigotry because there's just no like salient criticism there. And for the love of God, saying that she's demonic, clearly that's not, it's not a reasonable criticism to make of this woman. So, she'll continue to live her life, her best life, and people will continue to hate. But it's really just gross to watch.
Listen, guys, I know a lot of you, not a lot of you, but some of you know folks who believe in demons. I love you, but it's nuts. There are no demons. That's mythology. There are no goblins. There's no. There's no werewolves. I mean, what do you want me? There's no Frankenstein. Do I need to clarify this stuff? But I do, because people think like, oh yeah, telling Lizzo that it's okay to not feel horrible about her body. You do that because you're possessed by demons.
No, it's the
vampires
demons
are real.
that tell her not to lose weight, and the people who put the pro-trans books in libraries, that's a Sasquatch.
Sasquatch. It doesn't exist. Get counseling. Okay, we got to take a break. So when we come back, more devastating news. All right, back on the power panel, Cenk, John, and Rayyvana with you guys. John's got more news.
I do, and it's gonna start off in Crazy Town. Take a look.
The deep state, they have weather manipulation technology. They have DARPA. They know how to manipulate and create big storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, climate change, etc. And these huge hurricanes always seem to target red states, red districts, and always at a convenient time, typically right before elections.
I mean, I know that Florida is prone to hurricanes. However, this developed into a Cat 4 or Cat 5 overnight.
Right.
And it does seem to be hitting the conservative areas of the state. I'm not putting it past the elites to target something like this towards Florida as punishment for getting rid of vaccine mandates or getting rid of child grooming. They are angry with us, and it wouldn't surprise me to find out. And yeah, the technology does exist.
It was Deanna Lorraine and Lauren Witzke. And look, to claim that the deep state is making hurricanes and then throwing them at Florida to punish DeSantis for stopping people from saying gay might seem irresponsible. It might seem crazy, but I don't know why you'd expect much from these two. They're only GOP Republican congressional candidate in 2020, as well as Delaware's GOP candidate for Senate in 2020. My, how the crazy have stayed on the same level. But here's the thing, for them to say that on whatever the hell network that was is one thing. The rhetoric coming from the more mainstream right wing is not that much better. Media Matters has done an amazing job of doing a roundup of the way that the right wing has talked about Hurricane Ian. And as part of their coverage, Fox News and Fox Business have aired numerous segments downplaying climate changes linked to hurricanes by claiming they have decreased in frequency. Specifically on the September 30th episode of Fox Business's WSJ at Large, host James Freeman cited a passage from the recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that discusses past hurricane activity, stating, quote, "There is still no consensus on the relative magnitude of human and natural influences on past changes in Atlantic hurricane activity." Now, he read that to make it seem as if, well, we don't know what's going on. What he left off was what happens later in that same report. The text says that there's absolutely confirmation of the growing intensity of hurricanes in a warming world. It mentions a warming world will mean more intense storms. And look, you might not know that guy, maybe he's a rando, but Tucker Carlson on September 29th talked about hurricane frequency, downplayed the intensity argument, falsely claiming that, quote, "there's no science behind these claims," which is a statement that's worth about as much as him calling January 6th a peaceful election fraud protest. But this is really an issue. They seem to understand that the worse these storms get, the more difficult it is to deny the connection between climate change and worsening extreme weather events. And they are very much playing defense, both rhetorically as well as for the fossil fuel companies. And so we could cite any number of other examples, and you should definitely check out Media Matters coverage of this topic, but they are trying to make sure that people don't draw what should be indisputable lessons from these recent hurricanes.
Yeah, so first real quick on the wacko clip. So I told you, I predicted on the show that Republicans would blame the deep state for the hurricane. And people thought, I mean, tongue in cheek. No, I meant literally. And there it is, I told you they'd do it. Crazy gonna do crazy, okay? So that's point one. Point two is, remember in the old days when the hurricanes would hit more left-wing areas, the right-wing preachers would come out and go, oh yeah, obviously because of gay pride rallies. And because of the gay pride parade, it got punished New Orleans, right? Pat Robertson said that, another preacher said it, right? Now that it's hitting red states, they're like, oh no, that's not God. And God's not angry at us, no way. Deep state, that's what it is, deep state, okay? People believe it. Okay, now on to Fox News, which is much more dangerous. So Media Matters showed clip after clip after clip after clip of so-called experts that they bring on. They go, hurricanes, no way, not at all intense, less frequent, no big deal, obviously climate change nonsense, right? Now, they break down a couple of things, but here, I'm gonna come back to who those so-called experts are, because one of them is a hoot, okay? The other two are like rando weathermen. None of them have any climate science background at all, except one guy, which I'm gonna come back to. But in terms of the reality, it's actually true that there are not more frequent hurricanes, but it is not at all true that they are not more intense. They're far more intense, okay? In fact, they turn intense quicker because of how much the oceans have heated up. So when she said in the cuckoo clip, like all of a sudden it turned into a Cat 5, right? That's exactly what scientists say hurricanes do because of climate change. They write ahead of time in the papers, oh, by the way, the hurricanes will become much more intense, much quicker. And then these guys look at that and go, obviously deep state. Okay, but look, the difference between the media, right? So if we were right wing, we would tell you, oh yeah, there's a lot more hurricanes. Yeah, what happened in my backyard the other day, okay? They just lie, right? They see the report, some of their experts read the report that says less frequent but more intense. And they go, nope, less intense. Because their job is not news, it's propaganda. Yeah. Okay, so you say, well, Cenk, how do you know? And who are they doing propaganda for? Well, one of their so-called experts is Roy Spencer. He's the one with a little bit of climate science background, actually. He's not random, like, hey, here's Storm Fields. Well, I'll tell you what, it's gonna be sunny tomorrow, and I say we keep going with oil, okay? But this guy, Roy Spencer, actually works at the Heartland Institute that is funded by oil companies. It's a think tank funded by fossil fuel companies. So they literally bring on an oil company lobbyist to tell you that climate change isn't real. If Adam McKay put it in a movie like Don't Look Up, people say, oh, it's over the top. It's over the top. They're literally doing it. Oil company lobbyists posing as experts in climate science to tell you that no, we should just keep drilling and making a lot and letting the oil companies make tons of money as the planet burns down. But it's okay, I know climate science. And Fox News actively participates in doing that propaganda. They pretend to be populist while the entire point of the network is corporate propaganda.
Yeah, as someone who's Gen Z, I've lived my entire life being with the reality of climate change. But from as early as I can remember until now, throughout all of school, learned about climate change, told about how it's going to impact the earth, and being raised that way, again, my entire life, I have always had this really deep, grave concern about climate change, that it's always so infuriating to me to see these conservatives and these two women on that show with all the mental faculties between them of 6-day-old hot dog water, downplaying the reality of climate change, blaming just a completely absurd notion that it's man-made, and that it's because I don't know if they realize this, but these weather events are not just happening in the United States. So, but of course it's the Democratic Party, but it's just so frustrating, so infuriating, because as someone who wants to get married, to have kids, to start a family, knowing that nothing is being done about climate change while people are being funded by oil companies or their own delusions, apparently, to deny climate change, just preventing people from having futures and lives, and knowing the impact that it will have moving forward if we do choose, people in my generation, to start families, on our children. it just really gets to me. It just really infuriates me.
100%.
Yeah, I just want to say one quick thing. So to Rayyvana's point, anytime you hear a lunatic conspiracy from the right wing, in other words, when they're talking, just think about it for 1 second and go down one chain of logic, right? So the deep state is creating more intense storms and hurricanes and flooding, et cetera, to Democratic advantage in America. Why did they bother flooding poor Pakistan?
Yep.
A third of Pakistan was underwater. And you know how much attention that got in America? None. I think we're the only ones who covered it. Okay, so like if that was their devious plot, well, now let's drown the Pakistanis just in case someone in Indiana cares. Well, that's like the world's worst deep state plot, right? But think about how nuts that is. That they think the Democrats are creating storms that devastate other countries for what, 1% or 1% political advantage back home? I mean, it's just literally nuts. That's 30% of the country. Literally nuts.
Yes, and they have one crazier belief that I'm gonna identify in a second. But first of all, if you are curious about the science of why storms have become more intense in general and why they're rapidly growing in intensity before making landfall, NPR has a good write-up of the science, which you can find in the past couple of days. Also, one point that we've passed over, when she claimed that it's suspicious that the hurricanes happen like right before the midterms, like right before the first week of November, like smack dab in hurricane season, that is suspicious that that's when they happen. But third of all, could you put up that B-roll of that video like you had with Cenk? Because I noticed something that I did not notice the first couple of times I watched that. I just need to be able to see the bottom thing. Biden builds transhuman cyborg army using immigrants. Why aren't we covering that?
I didn't even
Dark
know
Brandon. Cyborg laser eyes.
I didn't even notice. That's their candidates. That's their legitimate candidates. And the press has to call everything 50-50. I mean, look, to be fair, that cyborg army would be pretty badass.
It would. I would like to see that. Anyway.
All right, we gotta go. All right, everybody check out Reactions. Twitch.tv/TYT. Check out Rebel Headquarters clips by Rayyvana. She's killing it over there. And John does Damage Report. Okay, guys. More absolutely insane right-wing conspiracy theories, including how Halloween is going to poison your kids in 18 different ways and steal their soul for the devil when we return. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.